Hello friends, welcome back to my channel and welcome to another installment in my behind the scenes series of learning digital pattern making and taking you through the process of my own experience. At this point, I have a number of episodes out in this series taking you through the introduction part of my course, kind of what I was expecting to get out of it, starting the drafting process, taking personal measurements, drafting out my personal bodice block, sleeve, skirt, and pants block, testing and fitting mock-ups of the pants block and my bodice block, and then actually starting to draft out my first pattern in the course, which is a button-up shirt. From there, based on all of the adjustments I made to my personal bodice block, I now have a working pattern block with which to make pattern adjustments and adaptations and turn it into literally any style of clothing and pattern that I want to. Which is what brings me to today's video, working on my first kind of personal project, which is a self-driven project of me choosing what I want to draft using my bodice block. And obviously there are so many ideas that I currently have in my head and want to work on in regards to patterns that I want to bring to life. The fun thing is that a lot of the patterns I want to bring to life in my confident pattern making and grading course are items that I've actually made in the past and actually patterned in the past, but I patterned them on paper. So now I want to take those designs and bring them to life digitally in pattern making and then remake them, work out any adjustments that I originally wanted to make or kind of figured out that I needed to tweak in my original pieces. And then some of those are the patterns that I would actually love to bring to life and bring to market for all of you to sew yourself. But in today's video, I'm not actually working on any of those. I'm going to be working on a super simple wrap dress pattern. The reason that I'm starting off with this is, one, I know that it's going to be a pretty easy pattern to draft from my pattern block, but also if you watched my fall sewing plans video, you know that I talked about wanting to make a flannel wrap dress for the fall, specifically making it kind of with this idea of wearing it for Thanksgiving and making it as my Thanksgiving dress. And so in this video, I'm going to be working on the pattern drafting process to create that pattern that I can use for that flannel wrap dress. Now, I'm not sure when this specific video is going to be coming out. It will probably come out before Thanksgiving, I'm assuming. So this video is really just my process of walking through the steps of creating an original pattern and making pattern adjustments and doing a lot of pattern manipulation on my bodice block on Adobe Illustrator instead of on paper, which is how I would typically do all of my pattern manipulations in the past. Now, I won't actually be making the official Thanksgiving flannel wrap dress in this video. I'm hoping to film a whole separate video of that process, so stay tuned for that. But this video is my experience doing pattern manipulation to create and bring that pattern to life and then get to use it in that video. So in today's video, I'm going to be using my favorite fashion design resource when it comes to pattern drafting, and that is this book, Pattern Making for Fashion Design by Helen Joseph Armstrong. This is actually my textbook from college, from my pattern making class in college, is when I was really introduced to the technical world of pattern making, and ever since then have kind of been making my own patterns and bringing them to life if I couldn't find a pattern anywhere that fit an idea for a design or sewing project that I had in my head. But all of those had previously been pattern making and pattern drafting on paper. And now through taking the Confident Pattern Making course, I'm taking all of those skills and I'm transferring them to the digital sphere, drafting out patterns on Adobe Illustrator. But this book is a great resource for any of you who want to get into pattern drafting. I think I talked about this book in a video I made a couple years ago talking about like my favorite fashion and sewing books. I'll link that video down below because it's a really great resource. But this is a great book that I highly recommend for anyone who's wanting to get into pattern drafting on paper. This is actually the book that I used with my own students when I was teaching fashion design for 4 years. And really, if you walk through this book, I truly believe that anyone can learn pattern drafting on paper. And it really gives you the freedom to create any design that you want to and bring any garment and item to life. The reason that this is a great resource still for my digital pattern making class is that it goes through a lot of different pattern manipulation steps for taking your block and turning it into a variety of different styles. And so it shows you how you kind of have to tweak your pattern block in order to make those new styles. And so if I'm ever stumped on how I turn a regular bodice into a wrap dress or a wrap bodice, this is the book that I would go to walk me through the steps. So I'm going to be using this in this video because I know that it's going to be able to walk me through those adjustments that I want to make to my pattern block. So without further ado, let's dive into creating an original pattern, making a wrap dress. Okay, so I was looking through this book to find a section that is kind of the style that I'm trying to make. And obviously I'm trying to make a wrap dress. It's going to have a bodice that has kind of a wrap style connected to a skirt. So this is the section about surplus or wrap designs. This bodice design right here is fairly close to what I'm wanting to create, except I don't really want these gathers right here. I want it to go totally down and wrap around. So I think I'm going to be able to use kind of this illustration right here to help me figure out how I'm going to draft this for the front and the back. And then here are some additional things to help me. So this is what I'm going to use for the bodice section to kind of give me an idea. And then we also have this section talking about wrap skirts, which I think is going to be super helpful using my regular skirt block and then turning it into the wrap skirt style. I think that my wrap skirt is actually going to have gathering around the waist and not be completely fitted. I also want it to be a little flowier, so I'm definitely going to make some tweaks to it when I actually get into the drafting process. But this is kind of a good visual to help me figure out how I'm going to make the adjustments to my current pattern blocks. Alright, I'm sitting down on my computer. I have opened my bodice block, which is essentially my front and back bodice connected to my skirt and my sleeve block. From these pieces, I can trace them and then do pattern manipulation, which is essentially where you are changing the location and placement of lines, specifically the darts in the bodice and the skirt, and then you are moving lines out, moving them together to create new shapes. So once I have all these pulled up, a new file, I can retrace them and actually start to draft out these brand new pattern pieces. So let me show you what I'm working with so far. Okay, so these are currently my pattern blocks. They are my base template from which I trace and then do pattern manipulations to turn them into all of my styles. So I have my back block right here, which is essentially my back bodice. This is a skirt. They're all connected right now though, so you could essentially make a dress from that. My front bodice, my skirt, and my sleeve. I'm going to be using these pieces, retracing them, doing pattern manipulation, and then creating my brand new pattern from these. Okay, so I've retraced all of my pattern block pieces, and I was having some issues with the directions that were in my pattern making book because the wrap top was really not the style that I wanted to go with. I could have worked through it, but the internet is a wealth of knowledge when it comes to sewing, and half the time if I don't know how to do something, I just go to YouTube or go to Google, type in exactly what I'm trying to do, and there's usually a video or a blog post that walks you through step by step, showing me exactly how I can execute whatever I'm trying to make. So that's what I did. I went and found a really awesome video that is showing you how to draft a wrap dress pattern. I'll link it down below. I am such a visual person that if I can see someone physically manipulate different shapes and pieces to turn it in to a new pattern, it clicks and makes sense to me in my mind. So this video was super helpful, and so now I know what I want to do going forward, actually adjusting my pattern piece. Okay, so this is what I am currently working with so far. These are all of the different iterations of getting to these final pieces based on the video I watched and how I think the pattern piece should look. So a lot of manipulation over here. I copied all my pieces onto this artboard. Now this is the bodice front, I will cut and sew 2 of these and they will overlap on each other. This is the back, and then this is my current sleeve, so I'm going to see how that looks in mock-up. So now I need to just draft my ties for this and then sew up a little mock-up. Alright, these are currently all of my pattern pieces that I have drafted. I added pattern markings to them, and I also added seam allowance. So now I'm going to turn these into a projector file and project them out onto my fabric to sew up a sample. Okay, this is my bodice so far. I should have chosen a different color because it's so hard to see with all this black and white. But I haven't sewn the sleeves on yet. I already made adjustments and shortened these front sections like a lot, because once I sewed up the dart, they were like diagonal down here. And so I think I took off probably like 2.5 inches of length, and it's fitting more at my waist where I want it to fit. I made a little hole in the seam over here to tighten this up so that it can wrap around. So now we're wrapping. Wrap garments are always really interesting. So there's a lot of just different fitting to do, I feel like, just to get it to the place where you want it to be. I don't mind this, but definitely interesting. The one thing that is really good is my darts fit really well. I definitely need to bring this neck in, so let's draw some lines for that right now. I would technically be taking off, I think, like 1/4 of an inch on the neck, but this is still like too much because I would much rather have it essentially like this for the neckline. So essentially, if we come up here, like, where do I want this to go? Right here. And then we just keep going. I also feel like these ends, I'm trying to figure out where the ends go and like how they match up well. Maybe what I need to do is still just shorten these edges and the ties, because when you do like a wrap, you're pulling it really tight, so you essentially want the sides to be shorter. Okay, so these are my adjustments so far on my mock-up. Although I kind of cut this out to be like a wearable toile, if there's not a ton of crazy changes, I can turn it into like a top to wear. And then I also have my peplum to tie on, but I might go in and shorten these edges before I finish sewing the rest up. Alright, I sewed down the neckline with bias tape and I added my ruffle. The only thing left on this test is to add the sleeves, which I'm going to be doing next, but I like to kind of try it on at different steps throughout the process, because I find that if I'm just going to sew something from start to finish without ever like trying it on, I usually have to go back and rip out seams, do so many adjustments, and so I feel like I usually take the approach to do fittings throughout the process. This is also a mock-up and a test or a toile. So there's a lot of things I've been tweaking and changing, and probably even some more that I'm going to. But this is what we have thus far, and I'm honestly not too mad about it. I think that everything is kind of somewhat fitting how I'm wanting it to. The adjustments that I've made seem correct and accurate. I feel like I'm gonna have to play around with this neckline to get it maybe centered. Okay, but so hard to see in this light because this is black and white. But I added a little ruffle to the bottom and it's kind of fun. And this ties in the back, although I don't know, considering it's a wrap, if I were to make these straps longer, I could wrap it to the front. And it still needs sleeves, so right now it almost looks like one of those like 1950s like wrap dresses that you would put over your clothes to like not get dirty while you're doing housework, which is still kind of fun. I like it. All right, not too shabby. All right, we have the sleeves on, and I definitely need to make some adjustments to these sleeves because they're not as like puffy and big as I wanted. I love really puffy sleeves with gathers all the way around and then enough fabric at the bottom to gather it and put elastic. And how I drafted these, I didn't add enough width in the middle of the sleeve, so I just have gathers up here, which I don't entirely mind. I think I'm actually just going to hem these sleeves like 1.5 inches and have them be just short sleeves with no elastic at the bottom and a little bit of gathering at the top. And I actually really do like that kind of shape, but for this dress I think I'm wanting to have more of like a puff sleeve or a long sleeve that goes down and has elastic at the bottom, so I need to play around with that. But it's all coming together. I'm so pleased with how this is looking and the adjustments that I was making to these pieces. So what I'm going to have to do once I've finished hemming these sleeves is actually go back to Adobe Illustrator and actually apply all the adjustments that I made while sewing this up to my actual pattern pieces on Adobe, and then re-add seam allowance and then re-sew it again to see if those adjustments actually transferred over. Alright, it's the next day after working on and sewing up my mock-up for my wrap top. I'm actually wearing it today. I actually love it. It's so much more as a top than I thought I was going to. So I think for this pattern, I'm going to have it with like a dress and a top option. I've also been playing around with the idea of adding like a collar to it because I saw this wrap dress with a collar on Instagram and it was so cute. But anyways, today my goal is to apply all of my pattern adjustments that I made while sewing up this mock-up to my actual pattern. I'm definitely going to have to shave off some of like the neckline and the front of the bodice. I have to remove some kind of length from the bottom of the bodice, shorten the ends where the tie is going to be. So I'm going to apply all of those adjustments to my pattern pieces on Adobe Illustrator, and then I'll probably sew up a second test to make sure that all of my adjustments were actually accurate. So I'll probably sew up another bodice. Maybe we'll play around with the color. We'll see. But so far, this pattern is coming along. All right, I have made the adjustments to all my pattern pieces and re-added seam allowance to them. I also decided to draft out a collar and play around with it on this test mock-up to see how I like it. But let me show you what the pattern pieces are looking like so far.
Okay, so over here in the bottom right are what my new current pattern pieces are. I made a lot of adjustments to my original pattern pieces when I was making my wearable toile, so I adjusted the neckline and this bottom hem, and then also made sure the shoulders were aligning. So these are my new pattern adjustments on those pieces. I also drafted out a little collar, so we're going to see how that goes. And the collar like has a ruffle to go around it, so that's the ruffle piece. I also drafted out some interfacing pieces for these bodices, and then I added some allowance to all of the pieces. So now I'm just going to project those and sew up another sample.
Alright, this is the second iteration of my wrap dress pattern in a bodice for testing. So I adjusted and took all of my adjustments from my first wearable toile mock-up, the black and white one. I applied them to my digital files, adjusted the pattern pieces as needed, and then re-sewed them up in a new bodice to make sure that all those adjustments worked out. I also drafted a puff sleeve this time, so there's elastic at the bottom, and I added more gathering to the top. And then I also decided to draft out a fun oversized collar because I thought that would look really, really cute. So this is the collar, super fun with ruffles. We love some good ruffles. This is what it looks like in the back. And then again, same thing, the peplum on the bottom. So as much as I love this, I feel like this giant collar is definitely kind of taking away from the beauty of the wrap style. One thing I love about the wrap, like fitted wrap tops and dresses, is they have these beautiful lines that I feel like just really accentuate your body in really flattering ways, in my opinion. And I feel like the collar is kind of taking away from those beautiful lines of the bodice. So I think I'm going to redraft like a skinnier collar, something more like this, like a tiny collar, so that you can still get those lines of the bodice. And then I will apply that in my next test of a bodice and or dress. I think I might try it for a dress this next time to see how I like that collar. Overall, I think I'm going to stick with a no collar for this pattern, but I want like the option of adding a collar if I want. And yeah, I think that the more I've been working on this pattern, because originally this pattern was just going to be for like my Thanksgiving dress and to make a wrap dress for my closet, because I wanted one and I could never, there's really no wrap dress styles that fit the vision that I had in my head, so it's nice that I can draft it myself. But the more I work on this, I realized that I actually really do love this pattern. So maybe this would be a pattern that I play around with releasing at some point. So if you like this idea of a fitted bodice wrap dress, by fitted bodice I mean there are darts in the front for accentuation and fitting of your bust and torso. There's also darts in the back, so instead of it being like a loose wrap dress, which some tops and wrap dresses are, this one is meant to be fitted but also still have the adjustment of the wrap so you can wrap it tighter or looser. So anyways, if this would be something that you would be interested in, let me know in the comments, and also let me know your opinion on tiny collar versus large collar. I also, when thinking about this pattern, was playing around with the idea of just doing like ruffles on the edges of this. So I might add that in for my Thanksgiving dress because I feel like tiny ruffles like all the way around, they kind of look fun. So we'll see where this process takes me. All right, I am in the studio for another day working. No makeup on today, and as you can tell, we're dealing with some breakouts. So here's the true reality of life unfiltered. But anyways, I have now sewn up 2 wrap tops as test. I drafted out my idea for what I want the skirt to be on this dress, and so I just finished cutting out all the pieces for my first wrap dress test. These are a lot of the pieces that I cut. This is the fabric that I used. It was a sheet that I thrifted earlier this year, so I thought it would be really pretty for this dress, and it also had enough for my test. My skirt is over there at my sewing machine, and then I've also been writing down notes as I've been working through this dress cutout to get a better understanding of yardage for all the pattern pieces. So this is all my randomness. Also, I think on this test, instead of doing the skinny collar, I think I'm going to try doing ruffles all the way around the neckline. So I cut that out and we're gonna see how that looks. So this is essentially the test of my main pattern, because the whole idea of this pattern originally was to be a dress, and so we're testing out what I have drafted for the bodice and now the skirt to make the dress. And if everything works out on this test, then I can actually move on to sewing my Thanksgiving dress, which was the whole reason that I have been drafting out this pattern. I want to make a flannel wrap dress for Thanksgiving. So yeah, we'll see how this goes. Fingers crossed. I don't have a lot of tweaks to make. It is a no makeup sewing day, as you can tell, breakouts and all, but that's the true reality of just behind the scenes filming. All right, I am working on my wrap dress today. I have the bodice sewn together, and now I'm working on attaching the skirt to the bodice to actually test the whole wrap dress aspect of it. And then I'll be adding the sleeves and the collar. I was playing around with adding a ruffle to like the whole neckline and then down the front. I'll insert a picture of what it looks like. I did love how this ruffle looked. The main reason I added the ruffle to this dress, to the neckline of this dress, I just had it pinned, is that I wanted to see how it would look, because my vision for my official dress that I am making this whole pattern for, which is a flannel dress for Thanksgiving, I was planning on adding this ruffle to the neckline. But on this specific sample, I remade the collar skinnier. And this is the color that we are actually going to add to this sample. So there's a lot of different embellishment and neckline options that I've been creating for this pattern, which is really fun. And I think for this specific sample, the smaller color is going to look really pretty. The ruffles would have also looked pretty, but I also now know that the ruffles will look really good on the flannel because I created it on this to just see how it looked. All right, we have the dress sewn up, and I have it on over my warm winter clothes. I'll show you like the full length in a minute. But like I said, I adjusted and made the collar smaller. I was toying around with putting ruffles all the way, but on this specific sample I decided to do the smaller collar, and I do like it. The only thing is that I think I made the edges a little too curved, so I'm going to go in and straighten out those edges on the pattern piece so that it lays a little flatter. But I think this collar is definitely, proportion wise, way better. For this bodice, you're able to actually appreciate all of the lines and the fitting of it. I also think that I'm going to shorten the bodice a bit. For some reason in this dress form, the torso bodice part just seems like way too long, so I think I still need to shorten it even more. I also kind of adjusted and changed how I did the end of the sleeves and did more of a ruffle, which I actually like a whole lot more. So there's that. Here's the back. I'll show you like a full video of the back. All right, let's see if this is better, angling it down. Okay, so for the front of the skirt, I did it where the pattern piece was like angled so it would have more of a drape, and it definitely has the draping that I'm wanting. However, the back I cut as like a rectangular panel to gather at the waist and then sew into the front pieces. And I don't know why I didn't think about it before, but having straight edges on that back panel just completely skewed the shape of the skirt, and you'll be able to tell that when I turn around. So it's like, I don't know, it's just like not flowy. There's not a shape there. I love the gathers, and this is what the back looks like. So you can tell the side seams are right here, and if I had angled the edges out more, it would have more of a flare. So that is one thing that I want to go and adjust in the pattern. So all in all, a lot of the adjustments worked out how I wanted them to. In this dress, the main thing is the skirt, and I know what I need to go and do. I essentially need the pattern pieces to be more of like an A shape or a triangle where you have the curve for the waist, but then the edges need to have kind of this diagonal shape to create the drape and the droop and the flary flowiness of the skirts for it to be good. So yeah, I'm going to adjust those on the pattern pieces, and then I think that this pattern is good to go being used to sew up my flannel Thanksgiving dress. So I am going to end the video here. I think this behind the scenes of making my first personal project pattern, I learned a lot. Definitely have challenged myself in great ways, and it's so fun to actually like see version 3 of this pattern come to life and start to kind of see my vision actually before me and have this wrap dress that I really love. I'm gonna have so many fun like top and dress variations and versions of this by the time this pattern is fully like honed in and tuned up. But yeah, thank you all for watching this. I hope that you enjoyed this video. I feel like this behind the scenes was definitely like more exciting because I was actually taking you through like my creative process, kind of the process of actually working on a personal project, making an actual pattern. So if you like this pattern, let me know. Like I mentioned before in this video earlier on, I think I have 2 other patterns that I'm really wanting to turn into the patterns that I bring to market. This pattern is not one of them, but I have really grown to love this pattern. So if this specific wrap dress and wrap top with the color variations and the sleeves that I have created is a pattern that you feel like fits your style or is a pattern that you would be interested in, let me know in the comments, because maybe I will consider turning this pattern into an actual pattern that I bring to market, because I think it's just a really great classic piece. I think it's also a piece that even beginner sewists can easily execute and sew. So yeah, I'm really excited about it. Don't forget to give this video a thumbs up, and make sure as always that you are subscribed to my channel, because there's so many exciting things coming in the future as I continue on my pattern making journey, and I hope that you will join me in that journey and follow along. Thank you so much for watching. Happy sewing, everyone. Bye.